On September 26, 1943, in a balmy tropical night, 3 small canoes cut through the dark waters of Japanese-occupied Singapore harbor. Their occupants, an elite British and Australian special operations team, were about to carry out one of the most daring commando raids in history. Having survived a 2,000-mile voyage through hostile seas disguised as locals in a captured Japanese fishing boat, they now prepared to blow the enemy merchant fleet sky-high with limpet mines. Blacked-out ships loomed like ghosts against the shadowy hills. In the first canoe, Major Ivan Lyon and able seaman Andrew Houston battled treacherous currents, their hearts pounding as they stealthily maneuvered their fragile craft alongside a hulking tanker and carefully began fixing limpet mines to the ship's hull. Suddenly, Houston froze and nudged Lyon, gesturing upwards. 10 feet above, a face peered down from a porthole. The Commandos' muscles tensed, fingers hovering over their weapons. One shout, one alarm, and their fate would be sealed. The entire Operation MOS in the planning could unravel in seconds as the strangers' stare intensified. Seconds stretched into an eternity while Lyon's mind raced, calculating their odds of escape. In the dark days of early 1943, the Allied war effort in the Pacific was struggling. Japan's grip on Southeast Asia seemed unbreakable, and Singapore, once a bastion of British power, had become a fortress for the enemy. It was in this context that an audacious plan was born. The architect, a 28-year-old British officer, Captain Ivan Lyon, had escaped from Singapore during its fall to the Japanese in 1942, and the idea of striking back had consumed him ever since. His unlikely partner in the venture was Bill Reynolds, a 61-year-old Australian civilian with intimate knowledge of the region's waters and access to a rare asset around which the entire idea would be formed. A 70-foot-long captured Japanese fishing vessel called Commandos. Lyon realized this unassuming craft could provide a Trojan horse for his simple yet daring plan. By disguising men from an Allied Special Operations Unit as local fishermen, he could get Kummeru near Singapore without attracting attention from the enemy. 6 brave commandos would then board collapsible canoes, known as folboats, paddle into the harbor under cover of darkness, attach limpet mines to the Japanese merchant ships anchored there, and return to the fishing boat for the long journey back to Australia. The risks were enormous. If discovered, the men would certainly be executed. Even if successful, they would have to navigate back through Japanese-controlled waters for weeks. Yet Lyon and his team were undeterred, christening their plan Operation Jaywick. They saw this as their chance to hit back at an enemy that had seemed invincible. Kumaro was renamed Crate, after a small but lethal Asian snake. It was a fitting moniker for a vessel designed to slip into enemy waters undetected and deliver a cunning strike. Crate would carry a team of operatives from Z Special Unit, a joint Allied Special Operations Unit. Lyon, now a major, would be accompanied on board by 13 men who represented a carefully selected mix of British and Australian sailors and soldiers, each chosen for unique skills and unwavering courage. Members included Lieutenant Hubert Edward K.S. as captain, Lieutenant Donald Monaghan Davidson, an expert in covert operations, and Lieutenant Robert Charles Page, skilled in navigation and explosives. The team was rounded out by corporals and able seamen whose individual talents were crucial to Operation Jaywick's potential success. The groundwork for the raid began at a secluded area along the Hawkesbury River in New South Wales. This remote spot, christened Camp X, was converted into a rigorous training ground for the operatives. By August 1943, the team was aboard Crate, on their way to Exmouth Gulf, Western Australia, where the fishing vessel would undergo repairs and extensive modifications to prepare her for the long and dangerous journey ahead. Her engine was overhauled to ensure reliability over the vast distances she would need to cover. Extra fuel tanks were installed and cleverly disguised as part of the ship's structure, and a radio set essential for maintaining contact with HQ was hidden within a water tank. However, the mission faced a challenge when the folboats Lyon had specially ordered from England arrived late and were found to be faulty and lacking important parts. The team worked tirelessly to modify them, making on-the-spot changes to ensure they would function properly when the time came. In the end, there was little time for the crew to get accustomed to the new folboats, but unable to afford further delays, Crate set sail for Singapore on September 1. Barely had the mission begun when it hit another hurdle. A propeller extension shaft broke, and after emergency repairs, carried out with assistance from the American submarine rescue ship USS Chanticleer, Crate set off once again on September 2nd. As the crew headed toward their destiny, they settled into a routine with 4-hour watches, ensuring the vessel was manned around the clock. They knew the odds were stacked against them. Lieutenant Carrs later recalled that they all realized their chances of coming back were pretty slim. Yet despite the dangers, morale remained high. These men were eager to strike a blow against an enemy that had inflicted so much suffering on their comrades and allies. The first leg of the journey took Crate north, hugging the western coast of Australia for as long as possible. But once they headed further north, the chances of being discovered by the enemy increased. Japanese aircraft and ships regularly patrolled these waters, so the crew's attention to detail and concealing their true identity was paramount. In addition to flying Japanese ensigns to look more convincing as Asian fishermen, they wore songs and darkened their skin with brown dye. They were meticulous about not leaving any garbage of clearly British or Australian origin in their wake for fear of being discovered. Day after day, Crate inched closer to her target, the crew growing more tense as each passing nautical mile brought them deeper into enemy-controlled waters and increased the risk of detection. Their nerves were truly put to the test as they approached the infamous Lombok Strait, a crucial passage between the islands of Bali and Lombok, known to be infested with Japanese warships. Had their cover been blown there, it would undoubtedly have brought a swift and violent end to the operation. Their situation became even more precarious as the strait's currents slowed their progress significantly. The currents were so strong that at one point, Crate even found herself going backwards. However, after nearly 24 hours, Crate finally passed the Lombok Strait and her crew breathed a collective sigh of relief as they entered the Java Sea. Yet they could not afford to let their guard down because they were now in the heart of Japanese-controlled territory, surrounded on all sides by occupied islands. As they drew ever closer to Singapore on September 16, 1943, after a perilous journey spanning over 2,000 miles, Crate anchored off Pulau Poman as a potential disembarkation point. But early the next morning it was decided they would look for a better location. As Crate carefully navigated through nearby islands, the men noticed a sizable increase in enemy activity, including searchlights, floatplanes, and transport aircraft, making it clear the area was too dangerous to risk hiding out. And finally, in the early hours of September 8, Crate anchored off Pulau Panjang, which was considered safe enough to disembark the 6 operatives who would carry out the high-risk mission of entering Singapore Harbor. Major Lyon, Lieutenant Davidson, and Lieutenant Page, accompanied by able seamen Andrew Houston, Walter Falls, and Arthur Jones. Having dropped off the commando team, Crate headed back to Borneo, instructed to rendezvous with the team on October 1st at Pang. After 2 days of reconnaissance on Panjang, the operatives set out at dusk on September 20th in canoes laden with meat supplies, navigating to the Riau Archipelago's northern edge and island hopping for 3 nights before reaching Pulau Dongas, 8 miles southeast of Singapore Harbor, on September 22nd. 2 days later, they observed a fleet of ships totaling about 65,000 tons anchored in the roadstead and attempted an attack at 10 p.m., but strong, challenging currents forced them to abort. Regrouping, they moved to Pulau Subur, which provided a superior vantage point over the examination anchorage. On September 26th, at approximately 7:20 p.m., the operatives launched their second attempt from Subur, splitting into 3 folboat canoes, each with a specific target. Canoe 1 with Lyon and Houston headed for the examination anchorage. Canoe 2, with Davidson and Falls aimed for the eastern end of Keppel Harbor in the roads. And Canoe 3 with Page and Jones made for Pulau Bukam in the western end of Keppel Harbor. Corporal Andreu Krell, one of the mission's key planners, later recounted that the lads in the canoes were taking a terrible risk. If they were caught, it would be a toss-up whether they were shot as spies or tortured for information. Despite the danger, the 3 canoe teams worked with determined efficiency, each facing unique challenges. Lyon and Houston struggled against adverse currents in the examination anchorage. The blacked-out ships, nearly invisible against the shadowy hills, made target selection difficult, and after a painstaking search they finally attached limpet mines to a tanker's engine room and propeller shaft. As they worked, Houston silently alerted Lyon to an unexpected observer, a man watching them intently from a porthole about 10 feet above their position. The Commandos froze, their mission hanging by a thread, and for what seemed like an eternity, the stranger's gaze remained fixed on them. Just as they prepared to abandon their task, the man withdrew from view, and a bedside lamp flickered to life. In the cabin, miraculously, no alarm was raised. With a mixture of relief and trepidation, Lyon and Houston completed their work and set off on the long, tense journey back to Dongas, some 12 miles away. Page and Jones found more favorable conditions at Pulau. They successfully mined a freighter at the Bukam wharves before drifting with the current toward Keppel Harbor, where they attached explosives to 2 more freighters. Meanwhile, Davidson and Falls navigated to the eastern end of Keppel Harbor and the roads, their approach nearly ending in disaster when a tugboat almost ran them down, passing a mere 20 paces away. Undeterred, they slipped through an open booms gate into the harbor proper, found only small ships within, returned to the roads, and planted mines on 3 cargo vessels, each about 5,000 tons. In total, the team placed limpet mines on 7 ships ranging from 2,000 to 5,000 tons. Their perilous work complete, the 3 teams slipped out of the harbor as silently as they had entered, setting course independently to rendezvous with Crate at Pulau Pampang. The following morning, a series of explosions rocked Singapore Harbor as 6 ships totaling over 39,000 tons were sunk or severely damaged. The Japanese caught completely off guard and thrown into confusion, while Crate was already heading back to Australia with her crew, unaware of the full extent of their success. They had struck a significant blow against the enemy right in the heart of their territory. But with the mission accomplished, Crate's crew faced another daunting challenge: the long journey home through enemy-controlled waters. The vessel was now low on fuel and supplies, making the return trip even more perilous than the outward journey. The crew's nerves were on edge as they retraced their route through the Java Sea and the Lombok Strait, knowing news of the attack would have reached Japanese naval command by now and likely resulted in increased patrols and heightened alertness. As Crate navigated the treacherous waters of the Lombok Strait, the crew's worst fears materialized when a Japanese patrol vessel emerged from the mist, its sleek silhouette growing larger by the second. The men on Crate's deck felt their hearts race as they scrambled to maintain their cover. As simple fishermen, the patrol boat drew alongside, dwarfing the smaller Crate, its deck guns clearly visible and serving as a grim reminder of the stakes. But Crate's crew maintained a steady course, fighting the urge to alter speed or direction, and continued their practiced routine of pretending to mend nets, with trembling hands while desperately avoiding eye contact with the Japanese sailors mere yards away. Major Lyon watched the Japanese vessel from the corner of his eye, ready to give orders should the ruse be discovered. And for what seemed like an eternity, the two vessels sailed in parallel. Suddenly, a shout from the patrol boat cut through the air, and Crate's crew stiffened, certain their capture was imminent. But then the Japanese vessel began to turn, its wake churning the sea as it slowly pulled away and continued on its course, leaving Crate with her secret intact. As the enemy ship faded into the distance, the men of Crate allowed themselves to breathe again, having faced their greatest fear and emerged unscathed. But the incident served as a stark reminder of the constant danger that surrounded them. On October 19, 1943, after a journey of 48 days and over 4,000 miles, Crate returned to Exmouth Gulf, and the crew's seemingly impossible mission was finally complete. Operation Jaywick demonstrated the vulnerability of Japanese defenses and provided a much-needed morale boost to Allied forces in the Pacific theater. The gutsy nature of the raid and the skill of its execution showcased the potential of small-scale covert operations to impact the enemy significantly even in their most secure strongholds. And for the men who carried out the mission, it was a testament to their bravery and ingenuity. However, the long-term strategic impact was limited. Many of the damaged ships were repaired and returned to service within weeks, reducing the operation's effect on Japanese shipping capacity. And the Allied decision not to publicize the mission's true nature had severe unintended consequences. Unable to believe such an attack could have been mounted from Australia, Japanese authorities assumed it was the work of local saboteurs, which led to a brutal crackdown on Singapore's civilian population known as the Double Tenth Incident. Numerous innocent people were arrested, tortured, and executed as the Japanese sought to root out a non-existent local resistance network, raising ethical questions about the operation and the decision to maintain its secrecy. Meanwhile, the men of Operation Jaywick were sworn to silence about their role in the raid. Many participants were awarded medals for their bravery, though often in secret to preserve the mission's confidentiality. And it wasn't until decades later that their incredible story could be fully told. Crate, the unassuming fishing boat that had played such a crucial role in the operation, continued to serve throughout the war and today is preserved as a memorial at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney, a testament to one of the most audacious special operations of World War II.